If you've been following our channel this year, you know that I've had quite a few problems with sourcing and getting chicken litter applied. And a lot of those issues I've worked hard to overcome. Well, now we've come across another obstacle. Just recently, here on September 5th, the Jackson City Council passed a new ordinance banning the use of all chicken litter within the city limits of Jackson, Tennessee. Now, a lot of the ground we farm is in Madison County, in and around Jackson. Approximately 30% of the acres that we farm is actually within the Jackson city limits, and this ordinance is going to, if it actually follows through and is enforced, will greatly impact our way of farming. If you know our farm, you know that we've been leaders in conservation, stewardship, making high yields with minimal inputs, reducing our carbon footprint, reducing our pesticide use, reducing our fertilizer use, our commercial fertilizer use, and chicken litter is the backbone of a lot of our practices. Just to give you a few facts, just within the city limits of Jackson, if I have to replace the chicken litter that I use, that will require an additional 80 tons of commercial fertilizer to replace those nutrients. Just to produce that commercial fertilizer will cause another 240 tons of carbon dioxide to be released in the atmosphere for that fertilizer to be manufactured. Not only that, a lot of the commercial fertilizers that farmers use are not made domestically. They're made in countries, a lot of these countries that may actually be hostile to the United States, such as Russia. A big part of our fertilizer supply does come from Russia, and we all know what's going on in Russia and Ukraine right now. And not only that, but with the big demand of sustainable agricultural products from the consumers, from these businesses that use our products to manufacture their goods. There's been a big outcry for more sustainable, more green products over the course of the last 5 years and 10 years and whatnot. A lot of these companies that say that they're going green are doing so not necessarily by changing their practices, but by buying carbon credits from people who have sequestered carbon in their operation. And a lot of these carbon credits are coming from farmers such as myself. If I'm not able to use chicken litter and I have to use commercial fertilizer to replace the chicken litter, I'm not able to sequester as much carbon, therefore I don't have as many carbon credits to sell, therefore there's not as many carbon credits on the markets for these other companies to buy, claiming that they're being green. Now, our operation is just going to be a drop in the bucket. If this passes and is upheld, will the general effect be much at all? In reality, no. But however, this is a very dangerous policy that a lot of municipalities have been fighting across our nation. And even though right here in Jackson, Tennessee, this just might be a drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things, if this kind of thing gains momentum going across the country, the effects could be huge. Yes, I get it. Chicken litter does stink, but it only stinks for just a few days. You know, on average about 2 to 3 days out of the entire year. About 1% of the year that people neighboring the farms where chicken litter has been supplied have to actually deal with the smell. That's just a very small price to pay for having an organic, a better fertilizer source applied on the crops. In reality now, about 2% of the population is actually involved in production agriculture, allowing the other 98% of the population to feel free to pursue careers not related to agriculture, but it's only because 2% of the population is now producing all the food and fiber in the country. However, even though you in particular might not be involved in production agriculture, if you eat, you are involved in agriculture. The groceries, the food in the stores does not magically appear there. It comes from farms. Farms who are having to grow more with less resources. The land that we farm is rapidly diminishing as these cities spread outwards, taking up more and more farmland. The area I farm in northwest Jackson is a very prime example of that. In the last 15 years, I've seen the city continuously annex more and more farmland, bringing it into the city limits. So in reality, we have to farm around people. We have to farm around subdivisions. There's no getting around it. There's no more pushing farms away from cities. There's no other place to go. There's only so much land that can be farmed. And because of that, people are going to have to accept some hardships in order to be able to have a very cheap, very plentiful food supply. You know, farms are not the idealistic picturesque settings that is generally portrayed. We're not a bunch of manicured fields with a red barn sitting in the middle. Farms are dusty. Farms can be smelly. Farms can be noisy. There's just no getting around that. We're dealing with animals. We're dealing with insects. We're dealing with weeds. You know, we're dealing with decomposing plants. We're dealing with manure. There's a lot of things we're dealing with that often can produce, you know, annoying noises, dust, and smell. There's just no getting around that. But if people want to eat, there's some inconveniences that are going to have to be accepted by everybody. So in return, I'm asking for your support, regardless of whether you actually live in this area or not. If you're a member of a farm organization that might be able to help, I'm asking for your support, and the best way to support would be to write to the Jackson City Council stating that you support agriculture and you support our right to farm the way that we deem necessary, especially because we are leading the way on farming green and conservation and sustainability. Now, if you do write, I do ask that you be respectful in addressing the city council. I ask that you not be argumentative or combative or anything. I ask that you respectfully state your case and that you support the way we farm, and you would like to see us be able to continue that. But the bottom line is that this dangerous elitist mentality of not in my backyard needs to be fought. Just to give you an example, every day around noon on Van Drive is generally blocked by traffic, by cars trying to get into the local Chick-fil-A because it is so popular. This restaurant is only possible because chickens are being grown. Chickens are being grown, manure is being produced. If manure is being produced, it must be disposed of. There's definitely no lack of demand at Chick-fil-A for their products. But these same people that really want the Chick-fil-A products don't want to deal with the byproduct of making the chickens to go to the restaurants. And I'd like to ask, how much pollution is being made by all those cars blocking Van Drive trying to get into the local Chick-fil-A? And this goes against the carbon that I've already told you that I'm able to sequester and save from going into the atmosphere just by the use of chicken litter. So again, all we're asking for is just a little inconvenience, a little tolerance on the public's part in response for not having to produce their own food and having a very reliable, plentiful, relatively inexpensive food supply as opposed to other nations. And I ask you to stand up and fight for this, because while this is happening in my community today, it might be your community tomorrow. And we need to stop this kind of mentality from spreading across the nation. Again, I appreciate your help, and I appreciate any support you might be able to give us, and we'll see you in the next video.